Steve Liesman is here with the CNBC All-America Economic Survey is out. These guys, Steve, senior economics, we're good to see you with a look at some of the athletes' views.
No,
on
it's not just athletes.
It's not all Americans.
The coaches as well.
Because those are funny. Those are funny interviews. You got to admit when you go in and ask.
I did that once, When you after one of the Super Bowls, we talked to them.
You go in and ask them, "What do you think of Jay Powell?"
But this is
what about quantitative easing? Like you ask them that.
They have some good opinions on that.
Some of them really do come back and say, "I think they've been way too loose."
One of my first
monetary policy.
We don't have time for this. One of my first investigative stories was talking to football players, NFL players, about how they lose their money, and it was an interesting story about money management and how they decide to buy things and get.
So for the, would you say, 50th time, we should point out this has nothing to do with athletes?
This is a nationwide survey.
But how many times do you think? Is this maybe the 50th time that
How many quarters have you done this?
That I've said
2007.
that I've used that tired joke.
We took a little break during 2009. We only did one survey because of.
That's what I'm saying. How many quarters?
But it's a lot of quarters, and I'm not sure the joke is old. I think Greco's back there in the control room with his hand in his head, and shaking his head and saying, "Oh my
he's
God,
off.
not again."
If he was there, he's off today.
Oh, he's off today. So we saved him that. But Joe, here's the results. Americans' views on the economy turned more negative in the third quarter, deepening concerns about jobs and inflation on the outlook, and those sentiments, along with the shutdown, dragging down the president's overall approval ratings further into negative territory. The CNBC All-America Economic Survey of 1,000 people nationwide, finding that President Trump's overall approval dropped just modestly to 44% from 46%. Disapproval rose 1 point, but it's the economic approval that fell a more substantial 3 points to 42%. Disapproval rising 2 points to 55%. And this is continuing a second-term trend where President Trump's economic approval is running below his overall approval. He's averaged a net minus 11 in the three surveys so far in the second term, and that compares to plus 5 on net approval on the economy in his first term. Overall, his overall approval is slightly less negative than the first term, but now it's below. Hold on a second, Becky, you're jumping the gun, but you are right as usual. Economic approval hurt by views on specific issues and overall sour views on the economy. Take a look. The president's net approval is plus 5 on his handling of the southern border. That's his big issue there, and it's down, but still positive. Turned negative on deporting illegal immigrants. Improved a bit on foreign policy, but it's still negative, and it's turned substantially, Becky, more negative on tariffs. You can see there, the president remains deeply underwater on this issue, inflation and the cost of living, not doing well there. The percent of Americans optimistic now and optimistic about the future of the economy on average this year has risen to 24 from 17. But look at what's happened to pessimistic about the economy, rising to 57% from 40% on average.
So
back
you're
in 2024.
undecideds.
Yeah, not many people undecided on that issue. When it comes to who will be blamed for the economic fall, the potential economic fall from the shutdown, 53% of the public blaming congressional Republicans on the president, compared to 37% for congressional Democrats. That's a little wider than some of the other polls that have been out there. Yeah. The survey has a margin of error of 3.1%. 40% of our respondents were Republican, 38% Democrat. We do not solve for that result. In general, the president maintained overwhelming support of his party and equal opposition from Democrats. The key to the results is that independents are leaning really negative on the president, minus 20, minus 30. Dems are minus 90, Republicans plus 90. So then you figure out where the independents they're minus 20 to minus 30 on some of these approval ratings here. I was surprised by these results. I'll tell you why. One is I don't see the economy as that bad.
No.
In the overall economic data.
All-time highs.
We live in this milieu where we come in other than the last couple days, and the stock market's up and everybody's buoyant. That's not the case when you talk to average Americans here, according to this poll, when it comes to the economy. They're down on jobs and they're down on inflation, and they really dislike these tariffs.
I was listening to a conversation with Christopher Waller yesterday, and he made some really interesting points just about how the labor market is probably much weaker than we anticipate. I know there are things. I know that we've talked around some of these issues, the feeling of participation being down. But because we are losing, basically, people in this country at this point, zero immigration, if you look net,
right.
that if you were to keep it at those consistent levels, we'd probably be more at a 5% unemployment rate. And that might be something. That's why he thinks we need to cut rates more quickly and is kind of sticking out for that. But if that's the case, it would help explain why people don't feel so good about this economy.
I think it also explains, I was listening to your Amex report on American Express.
Yeah.
They're doing fine, and you hear a lot of comment from Fed officials about higher income people propelling the economy and consumption here, whereas low and middle income, I think they're feeling it. Look, we're
grocery prices.
I guess the president's trying to bring us through a transition here. That he has a very different idea of how the economy should be structured. And
global economy,
and perhaps there are benefits down the road, but it looks like the transition here, and actually, Scott,
the government surplus numbers yesterday were something I really
not really. They were less. There were some specific changes in there, and September's a surplus month, and you add the 20 billion or so or 30 billion of tariff numbers.
Right, the tariff numbers helped with that.
Yeah, but the only thing, we're up 36% since the panic of the tariffs. It's, maybe we're going down from here.
No, that's what I'm saying,
Maybe we're
Joe.
going down from. The other thing is, I think Trump will, on any issue, will never get above 40%, basically, with most polls. And it goes with the government shutdown. No one in their right mind doesn't realize that a continuing resolution that's being blocked in the Senate by Democrats is Republicans. It's just, if you do, maybe mainstream media, you hear enough of mainstream media. It's party in power. But even that doesn't explain it. It's a 24-page thing that Schumer voted on the first time. He's got his own individual problems with AOC.
People understand that,
Well, and if you start talking about people dying, and if it's the Obama. If you don't, these hyped up super subsidies from the pandemic, which are really it's not the Affordable Care Act, it's the Unaffordable Care Act. Something needs to be done because premiums are skyrocketing, not because of the expiration of subsidies. But no one ever went broke. And I won't finish that statement, but you can't figure out what's going on here. I mean, that's a sad poll number.
I will say this, that
But I will say about polls. You remember the person in Iowa that had to resign after she took that poll? She had Kamala up 3 points, and she lost by 14
And
points.
we were within
your answer is your poll sucks.
No, we only get a poll when we actually when we go to the whole national election. We get a real poll, and we make it.
Yeah,
November is going to be interesting in Virginia. We'll see Virginia.
Well, that's what I wanted to bring the conversation.
Virginia, New Jersey.
Time we have, but I have to admit, I'm not sure how much these political polls at this juncture matter, and let me explain why. The key to what may or may not happen in Congress is the extent to which congressional Republicans break with the president. There is no...
Or Democrats break with Chuck Schumer.
That will never happen.
Let me leave that to the side for a second.
Or Hakeem.
That's fair enough.
They're the Borg collective.
But even while these numbers look like they're going away from the president, and now let me just add one addendum here, which is that the Republican pollster pointed out, Joe, that these numbers for the president may not be that bad considering we're in the middle of a shutdown. That's an asterisk worth putting out there.
Right.
But if I don't see in these polls, because of the popularity of the president within his own party, and the fact that there are so few contested congressional districts, I'm not sure how much it matters at this point that public opinion is moving away from the president when it comes to these issues, because I don't know that there's a lever there.
They're playing us out.
There was a poll yesterday.
Play us out.
The previous one, I think it was Fox News, but Cettarelli was down 4 in the most recent poll. That's almost within the margin of error. You had down in Virginia, you had the Spamberg, whatever the name is, unable to disassociate from those comments about killing someone's kids at a debate. So I don't know whether Winsome Sears has a better chance. We had Youngkin on, of course, but he's going to say, Sears is going to win, but he's obviously got a horse in that game. But it should be interesting. And then
I would just say,
Mike McJohnson, they're picking up seats in the midterm, but that might be.
Well, on the statewide things, not the congressional district, but on the statewide things, that's where the independents are going to matter. Independents vote economics. It's that simple.